Welcome to The Last Calm Word. Let us get started with today's story. The video came in at 8:47 on the night of my 34th birthday, while 40 people were still singing my name in my own living room. I remember the exact time because I was holding my phone up to take a picture of the cake, and the message dropped down over the top of the screen from a number I did not recognize. And the little preview frame showed my wife's face pressed against a man I had not seen in 9 years. I laughed. Actually laughed because for about 2 seconds my brain refused to believe it was real, and then the singing hit the last note and everyone clapped, and I stood there with a knife in one hand and a lie in the other, smiling at a room full of people who thought they were watching a happy man. You want to know the worst part? It was not the video. The worst part came later that night when my 7-year-old daughter looked up at me from her pillow and said the one sentence that took the whole thing apart. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me back up because you need to understand how good it all looked from the outside before I show you what it was underneath. My name is Daniel, and 8 years ago I married a woman named Vanessa, who I genuinely believed was the best thing that had ever happened to me. We met when I was 25, at the tail end of a bad year, and she felt like the thing that finally made the year turn around. She was warm in that way that fills a room. She remembered everyone's name and everyone's birthday, and when she looked at you, it felt like being the only person on earth. I fell hard, and I fell fast. And within a year, we were engaged. There was one shadow in the beginning, and his name was Marcus. Marcus was the ex, the one before me, the one she had been with for 3 years and had almost married. When we first got together, she would talk about him sometimes, the way people talk about a storm that already passed, and I told myself it was healthy that she was being honest with me. He had moved to another state for work, they had ended it, and that was that. I met him exactly once, at a mutual friend's wedding, early on, and he shook my hand a little too long and said take care of her in a voice that I chose to hear as friendly. I chose to hear a lot of things as friendly back then. We got married. 2 years later, we had Lily. And if you had asked me at any point in the following 7 years whether my marriage was solid, I would have told you it was the one thing in my life I never worried about. Vanessa and I built a life that photographed beautifully. A house with a red door she had picked out. A daughter who had my stubborn chin and her mother's laugh. Sunday mornings with pancakes and cartoons. I worked long hours as a project manager for a construction firm. The kind of job where you are always one crisis away from a ruined weekend. And Vanessa stayed home with Lily and ran the whole domestic machine. And I told everyone I was the luckiest man I knew. I meant it. That is what makes me sick to think about now. I meant every word. So when my birthday rolled around, and Vanessa announced she wanted to throw me a real party, the kind we had not done since before Lily was born, I was touched. She spent 3 weeks on it. She invited my brother, my old college friends, the neighbors half my office. She hired a caterer. She ordered a cake shaped like a hard hat. As a joke about my job, she strung lights across the backyard. She kept saying, "You deserve this. You never let anyone do anything for you. Let me do this." And he lit here. God help me, I let her. And I stood in the middle of that party feeling loved, in a way I had not felt in years, right up until 8:47 when my phone buzzed and the ground opened up. I need to tell you what was in the video because you are picturing something, and it is worse than what you are picturing. It was about 40 seconds long, filmed through what looked like a restaurant window. A little grainy, but unmistakable. Vanessa, in a green dress, I recognized because I had bought it for her, sitting across a candlelit table from Marcus. His hand was over hers. She was laughing at something he said, that whole body laugh I fell in love with. And then she leaned across the table and kissed him slow, comfortable. The kiss of two people who had done it 1,000 times. And the timestamp burned into the corner of the video was from 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks. Right in the middle of planning my party. I stood in my own kitchen and did the math. And the math told me that on some evening, while I thought she was at a wine night with her friends, she was kissing the man. She almost married in a dress I paid for 3 weeks before she stood in front of 40 people and called me the love of her life. I did not confront her at the party. I want you to understand the strange calm that comes over you when your entire life rearranges itself in one moment. I put the phone in my pocket. I cut the cake. I thanked everyone for coming. I laughed at my brother's toast. I hugged the neighbors goodbye at the door. And the whole time there was a second version of me standing off to the side watching, taking notes, because some cold and ancient part of my brain had already understood that the smartest thing I could do was to say nothing and see everything. So I smiled through my own party like a man attending his own funeral. And I waited until the last guest was gone, and the caterer had packed up, and Vanessa was rinsing wine glasses in the sink. Actually humming, before I even let myself think about how to begin. But I did not begin that night. Because that night Lily changed everything. It was almost 11 and she was supposed to have been asleep for hours, but she had snuck back down for water the way kids do, and I carried her back up to bed because I needed something to hold on to. That was still simple. I tucked her in, I sat on the edge of her mattress, and I asked her the dumb automatic question, "Did you have fun at Daddy's party?" And she said yes, in that drowsy, half-asleep way. And then she said something else so quietly and so casually that at first I thought I had misheard. She said, "Daddy, is Marcus going to come live with us?" I froze. I asked her very gently, "Who is Marcus, sweetheart?" And she said, "Mommy's friend, the one from the video calls. He is really funny." And then, still half asleep, still innocent, with no idea at all, that she was pushing a knife straight through the center of my chest, she said the sentence, "I will hear on my deathbed." She said, "I wish Marcus was my real dad." He lets me stay up late. I do not remember standing up. I do not remember leaving her room. I remember being in the hallway with my back against the wall and my hand over my mouth, because a 7-year-old had just told me 2 things her mother thought I would never find out. That Marcus was not a storm that passed. He was a regular voice on video calls in my house, familiar enough to my daughter that she had built a little fantasy around him, and that somewhere along the way my wife had let my child start to imagine a life where I was replaced. Here is the thing about that night that I keep coming back to. Before Lily spoke, the video was a wound. A betrayal, yes, a marriage-ending one. But it was between 2 adults, and adults survived that. After Lily spoke, it stopped being about me, because I could see the whole architecture of it. Now the video calls the funny friend my real dad, and I understood that this was not a lonely woman making a mistake. This was a woman who had been quietly, patiently building a bridge to another life, and she had been walking my daughter across it, a little at a time. And that changed what I was willing to do. I want to tell you, I slept on it. I did not sleep at all. I lay next to Vanessa listening to her breathe, and I made a decision that I think saved me. I decided I was not going to explode. Exploding is what she would expect. Exploding gives the other person the story. They want the unhinged husband, the man who lost control. No, I was going to become the most boring, agreeable, oblivious husband on the face of the earth. And while I was doing that, I was going to find out exactly what I was dealing with. The next morning, I made pancakes. I kissed her cheek. I said the party was the best gift anyone had ever given me. And I watched her face do the thing that told me everything, that little flicker of relief, the relaxing of the shoulders of a person who has gotten away with it. That flicker made me colder than the video ever had. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own house, and I hated every second of it. I want to be honest about that, because people hear these stories and imagine some triumphant montage, and it is not that. It is ugly. It is the loneliest thing I have ever done. I started with the phone. Vanessa was careful, but she was not as careful as she thought, because people who feel safe get sloppy, and she felt very safe. I noticed she had started taking the phone into the bathroom, into the shower steam on long walks she never used to take. I noticed a second messaging app I did not recognize tucked into a folder with the notifications turned off. I did not touch it, not yet, because I knew that the second she suspected I was looking, she would lock everything down, and the truth would go underground where I could not reach it. Instead, I got patient. I paid attention to the family tablet, the one Lily used for her games, the one that was signed into Vanessa's cloud account because she had never bothered to separate them. And that is where I found the first real crack. Because Vanessa had been video calling Marcus, and some of those calls had been made on the tablet when her phone was charging, and the tablet, being a dumb family device, had kept a log. Names times durations. Call after call after call, going back not 3 weeks, not 3 months, but almost 2 years. 2 years of a man I thought was a closed chapter, calling my house sometimes for an hour, sometimes right there in the living room where my daughter played on the floor. I sat with that tablet in the garage at 1 a.m, and I felt something in me go very quiet and very hard. 2 years. But even then, even holding proof of 2 years, I made myself keep going because I had a feeling that the affair was the smaller crime. And I was right. The bigger thing I found by accident, and it is the thing that turned my grief into something with a spine. Vanessa kept a folder in her cloud account labeled of all the boring things recipes, and inside recipes buried under actual screenshots of actual recipes were documents. Scanned pages. A consultation summary from a family law attorney dated 8 months earlier. Notes about custody. Notes, and this is the part that took my breath away about me. A little file she had been building. The time I had raised my voice during an argument written up like an incident. The 2 nights a week I worked late framed as absence. A photo of a beer in my hand at a barbecue captioned with a date. She was building a case. Not a case that I had cheated because I had not. A case that I was the kind of father a court might quietly move to the sidelines. She was not planning to leave me. She was planning to take Lily, take the house, and slide Marcus into my life so smoothly that by the time I understood what had happened, my own daughter would already be calling him dad, and she had been rehearsing Lily for the role for months. I do not think I have ever been as angry as I was in that garage, and I do not think I have ever been as glad that I had not exploded, because now I understood the game, and now it was my turn to play it better. I did 3 things, and I did them quietly. First, I got a lawyer of my own, a sharp, unsentimental woman named Priya, who listened to my whole story without blinking, and then said one sentence, "I will never forget. Do not confront her. Do not tip her off. And whatever you do not move out of that house." Second, I made copies of everything. The call logs, the recipes folder, the second app, once I finally got into it, all of it backed up somewhere she could never reach. And third, I did the one thing that had been sitting in the back of my mind like a splinter since the moment Lily said my real dad. I ordered a paternity test. I need to explain why. Because it is not what you think. I never truly doubted that Lily was mine. She had my chin, my terrible sense of direction, my exact way of falling asleep in the car. But a 7-year-old had told me she wished another man was her real dad. And I had just learned that my wife was capable of engineering an entire alternate reality for my child. And a voice in my head said, "What if that is part of the story she is telling Lily? What if she has been whispering to my daughter that I am not really her father?" I had to know what was true so that no one could ever use the truth as a weapon against me. So one Saturday, while Vanessa was out at what she said was a spin class I did, the little cheek swab with Lily, turned it into a game about spies and secret missions, and mailed it off. Then I went back to being the boring, agreeable, oblivious husband, and I waited. The 2 weeks that I waited for those results were the strangest of my life. On the surface, our marriage looked better than it had in years because I was performing contentment like an Oscar campaign, and Vanessa, thinking she was in the clear and getting everything she wanted, was relaxed and affectionate in a way that would have melted me a month earlier. She cooked my favorite dinner. She reached for my hand in front of Lily, and every warm gesture landed on me like a small cruelty because I knew exactly what it was. A woman being kind to a man she had already decided to erase the way you are, extra gentle with something you are about to throw away. Then 2 things arrived in the same week, and the whole thing detonated, just not in the direction Vanessa expected. The first was a message. Remember the unknown number that sent the video on my birthday? I had been so consumed with Vanessa that I had never seriously asked the most obvious question: who filmed it, and why did they send it to me? Now that number messaged again. It was a woman named Rachel, and Rachel, it turned out, was Marcus' fiancé. That is right. While Marcus was video calling my wife and kissing her in restaurant windows, he was engaged to another woman in another city, a woman who had slowly figured out that her fiancé had a whole secret life, and who had hired someone to follow him, and who had gotten that 40-second video, and who had found me because she wanted the other victim to know. Rachel and I talked for 2 hours that night on the phone, 2 strangers who had been lied to by the same 2 people, and by the end of it, we were not strangers anymore. We were something like allies. She had her own folder. Messages between Marcus and Vanessa going back 2 years, the same 2 years my tablet had logged. Plans. Actual plans with dates. A lease Marcus had signed on an apartment 3 towns over, and a conversation screenshotted and time-stamped, where Vanessa wrote the sentence that I think finally burned the last of my grief away. She wrote once the custody thing goes through, and Daniel's out of the picture, Lily will adjust fast, kids forget. Kids forget. She was talking about me. She was talking about deleting me from my daughter's life, and betting that Lily would forget I ever existed. And the second thing that arrived that week was a plain envelope from the lab. I opened it alone in the garage, at the same workbench where I had found the recipes folder, and I read the number at the bottom. 99.9998%. Lily was mine. Of course she was mine. But I sat there holding that piece of paper, and I cried for the first time since my birthday. Not out of relief exactly, but out of something bigger, because that number meant that the one thing Vanessa could never take, the one thing. No lawyer, and no whispered story, and no funny man on a video call could ever change was that I was Lily's father all the way down, and now I could prove it to anyone who tried to say otherwise. That paper was armor. Now I had everything. And here is where I have to tell you that I did not do the dramatic thing. I did not wave the DNA test in Vanessa's face. I did not play the affair messages at a dinner party. Priya, my lawyer, had drilled it into me: the person who stays calm, stays in the house, and puts it all in front of a judge wins. The person who explodes hands the other side the story. So I let Vanessa make the first move, because I knew she would, because her plan was already in motion. And she did. About 10 days later, she sat me down at the kitchen table, put on the saddest face I have ever seen, and told me that she had been unhappy for a long time, that we had grown apart, that she thought it would be best for everyone, especially Lily. If we separated, she had rehearsed it. She had the sad little speech about how she would stay in the house with Lily to minimize disruption, how I could see Lily on weekends, how she just wanted things to be amicable. She reached across the table to take my hand, the same move from the video, and she said, "I hope we can keep this out of court for Lily's sake." And I looked at the woman I had loved for 9 years, the mother of my child, the person who had planned to convince my daughter that I had forgotten her. And I felt the last warm thing in me quietly close its eyes. And then I said, okay, just that. Okay. I let her think she had won, because Priya had told me the most beautiful thing a lawyer has ever told. Anyone let her file first, let her tell the court her version, and then we hand them the truth all at once. What followed took months, and I will not drag you through every hearing, but I will tell you the shape of it, because the shape is the whole point. Vanessa walked into that process confident. She had her recipes folder full of little manufactured grievances, her narrative of the distant workaholic husband, her plan to keep the house and the child, and quietly bring Marcus in once the dust settled. What she did not know was that her opponent had 2 years of call logs, a folder of her own attorney consultations proving premeditation, screenshots of her affair provided by the fiancé of her own lover, a signed lease in Marcus' name 3, towns over a paternity test she did not know existed, and a single message, in her own words, that said kids forget. And she did not know that I had never once raised my voice, never moved out, never given her a single incident to point at, because I'd spent those months being the calmest, most present father a court could ever hope to see. When Priya laid it all out, I watched Vanessa's face go through every stage in about 90 seconds. The confidence, the confusion, the dawning horror, and then the thing I had waited for without even knowing. I was waiting for it, understanding that she had been the one being watched. The custody arrangement did not go the way she had planned. It went almost exactly the opposite way. When a court sees documented, premeditated attempts by one parent to manufacture a false narrative and psychologically groom a child to replace the other parent, it does not look kindly on that parent. I ended up as Lily's primary custodial parent in the house with the red door with Vanessa, on a supervised limited schedule that she has to earn her way out of. And Marcus lost the thing he had been protecting the whole time, because Rachel, his fiancée, the woman who sent me the video, did not just leave him. She had been building her own case too, and it turned out Marcus had been financially entangled with her in ways that came apart very badly and very publicly the moment she pulled the thread. The apartment 3 towns over the one he had leased for the new life with my wife. He ended up living in it alone, no fiancé, no Vanessa, because Vanessa, once she was no longer the woman who came with a house and a daughter and a tidy new family, was apparently a lot less appealing to a man who had wanted a ready-made life, more than he had wanted her. The two of them did not ride off into anything. They just lost separately in their own apartments, in their own silence. I do not tell that part to gloat. I tell it because there is a kind of justice that does not come from anything. You do, it just comes from what people actually are finally becoming visible in the light, and I got to watch it happen. But none of that, not the custody, not the house, not the karma, is the part I hold on to. The part I hold on to is a night about 6 months after it all ended, when Lily and I were doing our new routine pancakes on Sunday, even though it was not morning, because we decided pancakes could be a dinner too. And she was telling me about a kid at school, and out of nowhere, she stopped and looked at me and said, "Daddy, I do not really remember Marcus anymore." And then she went right back to her story about the kid at school, because to her it was nothing, just a fact, a name that had faded. And I had to turn around and pretend to check the pancakes so she would not see my face. Because her mother had bet everything, the marriage, the affair, the lawyer, the whole 2-year plan, on one sentence: kids forget. And she had been right that kids forget. She had just been catastrophically wrong about who. Lily did not forget me. She forgot him. She forgot the whole story her mother tried to write over her real life. And she kept the real one, the one with the red door and the pancakes and the man who never left. People ask me sometimes if I am bitter, and I tell them the truth, which is that I used to be in that garage at 1 a.m. I was made of bitterness. But you cannot raise a happy kid on bitterness. And I had a happy kid to raise, so somewhere along the way I put it down. What I kept instead was the strangest, hardest one, kind of gratitude. Because the video on my birthday did not ruin my life. It saved it. If Rachel had never filmed it, if that message had never dropped down over my cake at 8:47, I would still be the luckiest man I knew, smiling in the middle of a party, having no idea that my wife was walking my daughter across a bridge to a life without me. The betrayal I could not see would have taken everything. The betrayal I could see gave me the chance to fight for the one thing that mattered and win. So no, I am not bitter. I am awake. The video came in at 8:47 on the night of my 34th birthday, while 40 people were still singing my name. And for 2 seconds, I thought it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. It turned out to be the moment I got my daughter back. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Wishing you all the best. Stay healthy and take care.